Letting them leave might feel like loss at first. But what if I told you it's your breakthrough in disguise? What if the goodbye you're hurting from is the exact moment your power begins? Letting them leave might just be the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it will also be the strongest, the most courageous, and the most liberating move you will ever make. Because here's the truth. Some people are not meant to go where you're going. Some people are chapters, not your conclusion. Some are lessons, not your legacy. And the longer you try to drag people who were never meant for your future into your destiny, the more delayed your greatness becomes. See, it takes strength to hold on, but it takes real power to let go. To say, you were part of my story, but you're not my whole book. That's growth. That's wisdom. That's you standing in your worth. You're not weak because you cared. You're not foolish because you believed. You're not naive because you hoped they would stay. That just proves your heart was in it. That just proves you were real. But sometimes being real means you love without attachment. Sometimes it means you give without clinging. Sometimes it means you release with peace instead of resentment. You see, the strong ones, the truly powerful ones, don't need to chase closure. They don't beg for explanations. They don't force people to stay. They understand something deeper. If you had to beg for it, it wasn't real. If you had to bend to keep it, it wasn't meant to last. Letting them leave doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you finally love yourself enough not to break for them anymore. It means you've learned to protect your peace over preserving the illusion. It means you've grown out of needing constant validation from people who were only there for a season. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is hold on to what's no longer holding you. Sometimes the very weight that's breaking your back is the person you keep carrying out of loyalty, out of memory, out of hope. But growth demands release. Strength demands distance. Destiny demands clarity. And when you're trying to elevate, you can't afford to stay attached to what's pulling you backward. There will come a moment when silence will be louder than conversation, when distance will feel more peaceful than proximity, when no response will be the loudest answer. And that moment, that's when you'll know. It's time to let go. And it won't feel like weakness. It'll feel like relief, like breathing again, like freedom. Because letting them leave is not about abandonment. It's about alignment. It's about saying, if you can walk away from me, then maybe you were never with me to begin with. And that's not bitterness. That's clarity. I know what it's like to want them to stay, to want things to go back to how they used to be, to rewind the clock and rewrite the ending. But life doesn't work that way. People don't stay where they don't feel called. Love doesn't grow where there's no soil. And healing doesn't happen in places you were only meant to pass through. So if they left, let them go. If they stopped calling, stop chasing. If they stopped checking in, stop checking for them. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to move forward. Here's what they won't tell you. Letting go is lonely at first. It's quiet. It's uncomfortable. It's filled with long nights and questions that don't have easy answers. But it's also where you find yourself again. It's where your voice gets louder, your peace gets deeper, and your soul starts to breathe again. Because you've been drowning, trying to keep people who were never willing to swim for you. You've been dimming your light so they wouldn't feel insecure. You've been settling for crumbs because they convinced you it was a feast. But not anymore. Now you rise. Now you grow. Now you let them leave with grace. Because you're done begging for what's not aligned with your future. You're done shrinking for comfort. You're done editing your soul just to fit in rooms you've already outgrown. And yes, it hurts It stings. It tears. But that pain, that's the pain of transformation. That's the stretching of your wings. That's the sound of chains breaking. And once those chains break, you'll never be the same. So many people confuse holding on with loyalty, when in truth, sometimes the greatest loyalty you can show is to your own soul. Because not everybody who started with you is qualified to finish with you. That's not arrogance, that's awareness. Some people were only sent to walk with you through one storm, not to build with you in the sunshine. And the danger comes when you keep handing lifetime access to people who were only ever supposed to be visitors. Letting them leave doesn't mean you failed. It means you evolved. You don't need to beg anyone to stay where they don't want to be. You don't need to perform, impress, or pretend to keep someone who doesn't see your worth without the show. Letting them go is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the deep knowing that what's meant for you will meet you where you are, not where you have to twist yourself to be. And if someone can leave you that easily, don't chase their shadow. Let them walk. Because love that's real won't require you to betray yourself to keep it alive. You were not born to beg for love. You were not created to be someone's emotional backup plan. You were not designed to be tolerated. You were born to be celebrated, to be respected, to be honored. And if someone doesn't see that, let them go. If someone doesn't cherish that, let them leave. Because one day, you'll thank God for every no, every unanswered call, every door that closed, because all of it was leading you to the space where you could finally meet yourself. And when you meet that version of yourself, the one who doesn't need approval to feel powerful, the one who doesn't fear solitude, the one who walks with clarity and confidence, you'll understand that letting them leave wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your becoming. Letting go is not about being heartless. It's about being whole. It's about no longer giving people the pen to write your story when they don't even know your language. It's about not lowering your standards just to keep someone in your life who's already shown they're not willing to rise with you. Because your destiny is not up for negotiation. Your peace is not a bargaining chip. Your value is not on clearance. And your future is too important to compromise for the comfort of those who refuse to grow. So yes, you may walk alone for a while, but you'll walk lighter, you'll walk freer, you'll walk taller, because you finally decided to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You finally realized that your healing doesn't come from them apologizing. Your freedom doesn't depend on them understanding. Your peace doesn't need their permission. All it needs is your decision. And that decision, to let them leave, that's where your power starts. That's where your life shifts. That's where the healing becomes permanent. Because now you're not just letting people go, you're letting go of the version of yourself that needed them in the first place. You're letting go of the false stories you told yourself about your worth. You're letting go of the idea that love has to hurt, that loyalty has to mean losing yourself, that commitment has to equal self-sacrifice. You're rewriting the script. You're taking the pen back. You're reclaiming your time, your voice, your power. And you're finally starting to realize that the people who left were not a loss. They were a lesson, a mirror, a moment, a push. Because sometimes God allows rejection to be your redirection. Sometimes the closed door is the only thing strong enough to get you to stop knocking on a house you were never meant to live in. And sometimes the storm isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to reveal who was never anchored in the first place. So stop asking why they left. Stop replaying conversations. Stop trying to make it make sense. It doesn't have to. All it has to do is teach you. All it has to do is free you. All it has to do is grow you. Letting them leave is not about hate. It's about harmony. It's about inner alignment. It's about no longer making space in your life for people who don't make space for your growth. You're not abandoning them. You're honoring you. There's a freedom that comes with not needing everyone to stay. A peace that settles in when you stop chasing love and start cultivating it within. You stop waiting for the phone to ring. You stop watching the door. You stop overthinking every little message, every silence, every shift in tone. You stop building your self-worth on whether or not they still show up. And that right there, that's the beginning of true strength. The moment you stop assigning your value to someone else's presence, and you start owning it for yourself. You weren't created to cling. You weren't created to convince people to see your worth. The people who are meant to walk with you will see your light without needing you to set yourself on fire. And the ones who leave when you no longer shrink for them, let them. Let them go with grace. Let them walk without anger. Let them leave without resistance. Because where you're headed requires the kind of people who don't just see your worth, but honor it. Letting them leave is a declaration. A quiet, powerful declaration to the universe that says, I'm no longer choosing pain disguised as love. I'm no longer settling for halfway loyalty. I'm no longer confusing attachment for commitment. And when you make that declaration, something shifts. You start attracting differently. You start choosing differently. You start standing differently. This is what healing looks like. It looks like silence where there used to be begging. It looks like stillness where there used to be chasing. It looks like dignity where there used to be desperation. And the best part, you don't have to hate anyone to do it. You don't have to drag their name. You don't have to wish them harm. You just release. Release with clarity. Release with class. Release with peace. You let go, not because you're bitter, but because you're better now. You let go, not because you didn't love them, but because you finally chose to love you more. And that is not selfish. That is survival. That is self-respect. That is sacred. That is you realizing that not everyone you lose is a loss. Some people are the weight that was slowing down your wings. And the moment you let go, that's the moment you begin to fly. You'll look back one day and smile at the version of you who chose peace over pretending, who chose strength over settling, who chose to walk away not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And that version of you, that's the one that becomes unstoppable. That's the one that builds a life based on truth, not tolerance. That's the one who stops being afraid of endings, because they know every ending is just a disguised beginning. So let them leave. Let them take their silence. Let them take their distance. Let them take their departure. And you take your life back. You take your peace back. You take your power back. You rise. You rebuild. You remember who you were before they doubted you. You remember who you are now, stronger, wiser, more whole. Because the strongest thing you'll ever do is not fight to keep people who don't want to stay. It's learning how to be okay when they're gone. It's rebuilding without resentment. It's growing without guilt. It's loving again without fear. You are not what they walked away from. You are what you rose into after they left. Sometimes, strength doesn't look like lifting heavy weights or shouting from the rooftops. Sometimes, strength looks like standing in an empty room, knowing they're not coming back, and choosing to breathe anyway, choosing to rise anyway, choosing to rebuild brick by brick, even when the foundation they helped you lay is gone. That's strength. That's the kind of resilience no one talks about. The kind that doesn't get posted, doesn't get celebrated, but changes lives in silence. Letting them go gives you something more valuable than comfort. It gives you clarity. You begin to see who you really are without their opinion in your ear. You start to hear your own voice again. You start to move based on truth, not trauma. You start to feel peace, not because life is perfect, but because you're no longer pretending. And when you operate from that place, nothing can shake you. No departure can destroy you. No silence can suffocate you. Because now, your security isn't in people. It's in your purpose. They say time heals all wounds, but time doesn't heal what you keep revisiting. So don't just let them leave physically. Let them leave mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Let them walk out of your memories, your habits, your what-ifs. Give them the freedom to be who they've chosen to be. And give yourself the gift of moving forward without trying to rewrite the past. Because the past can't be changed, but your future is still wide open. You've got dreams to chase, peace to protect, a calling to fulfill. And none of that is tied to someone who didn't have the strength to walk with you through your evolution. So don't stop growing to keep people comfortable. Don't shrink so they can stay. That's not love. That's limitation. And you were made for more. You'll reach a point where you no longer need apologies to forgive. You no longer need explanations to understand. You no longer need validation to move. That's when you know you've healed. That's when you know you've matured. That's when you know you let go, not because you stopped loving, but because you started living. You'll notice something beautiful start to happen when you truly let go. You stop needing the noise. You stop needing the crowd. You stop needing the comfort of company just to feel okay. You discover that solitude isn't a punishment, it's preparation. It's where you sharpen your spirit. It's where you reconnect with your creator. It's where you remember that your worth was never rooted in who stayed. It was always rooted in who you became after they left. People might say you changed. And you know what? You did. You stopped breaking your back to carry people who wouldn't lift a finger for you. You stopped handing out loyalty like candy, hoping someone would taste your worth. You stopped keeping doors open for people who walked past you like you were invisible. That's not bitterness. That's balance. That's knowing your peace is too sacred to be constantly sacrificed. And let me tell you something. They might try to come back. Not always out of love, but out of convenience, out of curiosity, out of confusion about how you got stronger without them. And you'll face the test. Do I reopen the door I locked for my healing? Or do I honor the growth I fought for in silence? You'll have to make that decision. But if you really value your peace, you'll choose to keep walking. Not in hate, but in honor. Because anyone who had the chance to walk with you and chose to leave should never get front row seats to your next level. This world will always try to convince you that being alone is a weakness. But the truth is, learning to be whole by yourself is one of the greatest strengths you'll ever develop. That strength is what makes you unshakable when others leave again. It's what makes you powerful when seasons shift. It's what makes you untouchable when people try to define you by who left instead of who you became. So keep building, keep healing, keep rising. Let the world say what it wants. Let the ones who didn't believe watch in silence. Let those who walked away sit in the distance. You're not bitter. You're better. You're not stuck. You're stable. You're not lonely. You're focused. Because the strongest thing you'll ever do is not holding on to what's fading. It's standing firm in what's real. And what's real is this. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to be chased, doesn't need to be begged, doesn't need to be explained. You're becoming the kind of person who can finally say, I'm enough, just as I am. And when you can finally say those words, I'm enough, everything begins to change. You no longer chase love. You no longer beg for understanding. You no longer explain your worth in places that were never meant to see it, because now your identity isn't built on their presence. It's anchored in your purpose. And that kind of clarity, that kind of internal foundation, that's unshakable. You start living on your terms. You walk into rooms differently. You carry yourself like someone who knows they survived the fire and didn't come out burnt, but built. You begin to protect your energy like it's your life source, because it is. You stop trying to prove you're enough for people who never saw you in the first place. And the moment you do that, you stop bleeding for approval. You stop breaking for attention. You stop chasing after the echo of validation. You realize now that not everyone's meant to understand you. Not everyone's equipped to hold you. And that's okay. Their absence didn't break you. It revealed you. It showed you who was there for your presence and who was just addicted to your potential. It separated the fans from the real ones. It filtered out the noise. And in the silence that followed, you heard something powerful for the first time, your own voice. And you listened. You listened when it said, "Enough of this cycle." You listened when it whispered, "You deserve more." You listened when it shouted, "Don't go back." You listened when it said, "Let them go." And from that moment on, you stopped living for someone else's comfort and started living for your own calling. You stopped being available to chaos. You stopped responding to people who only remembered your worth when they needed it. You stopped bending backwards to be understood by people who had no intention of learning your language. Letting them leave wasn't the loss, it was the lesson. And you took that lesson and you didn't just heal, you leveled up, you grew up, you bossed up. And now, you don't just carry your past, you carry the wisdom that came from surviving it. This is your power. Your power is in your peace. Your peace to walk away without war. Your peace to stand tall after being torn apart. Your peace to not just survive, but to thrive. See, the world celebrates the comeback, but rarely do they see the quiet strength it takes to let go, to not retaliate, to not scream, to not beg, to simply release, to exhale the pain, to inhale the promise, and move forward without carrying what was never yours to hold. And make no mistake, moving forward doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much about your own soul to keep staying stuck. You care too much about your calling to keep circling broken cycles. You care too much about your growth to keep watering deserts hoping for a garden. You learned that love doesn't mean holding on. It often means letting go, fully, finally, and without apology. So when the world asks you how you did it, how you healed, how you stood, how you kept going after being abandoned, misunderstood, underestimated, don't say a word. Let your life say it for you. Let your calm speak. Let your confidence walk into the room before you do. Let your joy be the loudest proof of your transformation, because nothing speaks louder than a soul that refused to stay broken. Letting them leave, that was the beginning. But what you did after they left, that's the story. That's where the real legacy is born. That's where you took all the pieces they scattered and you built something sacred. You built peace. You built purpose. You built yourself. And now, the next time someone comes into your life, they don't meet the version of you who feared abandonment. They meet the version who knows their worth, who knows how to stay whole, who knows how to walk away if it means preserving peace. You're no longer trying to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. So remember this: letting them leave wasn't weakness. It wasn't failure. It wasn't your fault. It was strength. It was growth. It was sacred. And it was necessary. Because sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is not holding on. It's letting go with grace and becoming everything they couldn't see in you. So rise now, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that you were always right, to believe in your worth, to walk away, to let them leave, and never look back. If you made it this far, drop 100 in the comments so I know you're part of the 1% who's serious about growth.